Howdy dowdy, everybody, and welcome back to a very special episode of the Unfictional Soundscape. I am your host and producer, Author Man. Today is the day of our first interview, and we are starting off strong with Nick Nocturne, the cat man behind the Nightmind channel, which has been going on for almost 6 years, known for his legendary analysis skills and as a pillar of the Unfiction community. Nick recently published 2 great videos about 2 fantastic Unfiction pieces, Catastrophe Crow and PB here. Check them out on the Nightmind channel, but before you do, let's get the show going. Welcome to the show, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, thank you for asking. It is 4 a.m. where I am right now, and city is quite quiet. Oh, I'm back home, by the way. I'm back in my apartment, and I'm happy to be back. Midterms just finished, and we're living our lives. So, the first question that I have is about PB here. Well, the first topic that I have is about PB here and Catastrophe Crow. So, what do you think PB here's success says for the future of Unfiction pieces on TikTok? Do you think they'll likely take on the same format of like the call and response where the content is asking the audience to give something and then they respond and then the content, responds? And if not, what is a format that you think will thrive more?
I think it absolutely will thrive as results of what PP here did. So for TikTok, as I understand it, I'm not huge on TikTok, but I've seen enough of it, and I'm well aware of enough of its functions and the way that things go on TikTok to know that there is more of a call and response atmosphere over there. And it sort of lends itself more to that angle of working out a project than anything else. Um, the only other thing that you could really think of is something like Twitter for immediacy. But people on TikTok, I've noticed, seem to really jump at the chance to hop onto a duet or make a reply or just grab somebody else's video and then run a snippet of that and then follow up with something of their own.
Mhm.
So I think it really did show this is something that you can do here. We're kind of sitting on one of the best possible interactivity factors for a new storytelling platform. I think it blazed a little bit of a trail there.
I agree with that. You're quite right. It does sort of lend itself to that because usually, I mean, ARG just was all about interactivity between the audience and the creator. So this kind of gives all of them a very direct line of communication with the content itself. That's really interesting. I agree. Um, so I don't have many more. I don't really have any other questions about PB here, but more about Catastrophe Crow. Uh, so Catastrophe Crow is another sort of installment in the unfiction field where the main topic is a lost video game that nobody's ever heard of before. And we have 2 very large examples of that. How would you compare and contrast Ben Drowned and Petscop to Catastrophe Crow, and would you say that you prefer any of them over the other?
Ooh, that's difficult. Okay, so for preferences, hmm. I'll say what I always say because it's still always true, is
Uh,
that no matter what the project is, there are going to be things that one project excels at that another did not. But everything that is excellent is its own flavor, it's its own world, its own presentation. And you have to look at it for the case of did you do a great job for what you are and what you're presenting? Petscop is wildly different from something like Catastrophe Crow, and both of them actually separate themselves quite a lot from Ben Drowned in my mind.
mm,
Not just for the atmospheres that they present or the stories that they tell, but the way they executed everything about themselves. Um, Ben Drowned. you could interact with and you had to interact with. That was a full-blown ARG. If you want the story, you gotta get into the room. You gotta sit down and talk to people. Petscop, that was absolutely not the case. This is one of those situations where it's like, sit down, lean back, show's on. And you could probably sit down and study it yourself if you wanted to go ahead and piece things together, and it didn't need you to interact with the media itself or the person behind it. As for Catastrophe Crow, that's more of a bend drown case, where it definitely required some interaction and some communities coming together. But what I think is so different about Catastrophe Crow in comparison to everything else is it took what is a very well established trope right now, which is lost video game or old video game that everybody loves and now suddenly it's haunted or corrupted, and told you the story from a totally different perspective. It's actually brilliant how it
Hmm.
executed, going from a YouTube documentary style perspective, because that's where this kind of thing is most saturated, is on YouTube.
Hmm.
So it approached it as a real deal, as an actual public thing that was in the works. And everything about it, it took the best lessons possible from its predecessors and said, I'm going to do something like that, but I'm going to do it new. I'm going to do it different, and I'm going to tell a story in a fashion that has not been told before. And it's going to be a different sort of story with this kind of trope.
Awesome. I agree. 100%. Do you prefer any of them over the other?
Hmm. This is tough, especially because
Mm. Uh-huh.
so many
Uh-huh.
people misinterpret my last video on Petscop. Okay, at the beginning, I made a joke that was taken completely the wrong way.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that the more that I talked about Petscop, it urged it to upload, which was not the case. I was making a joke about how every time I open my mouth, of course, another upload appears, as if
Yeah.
like I'm in the middle of writing a script. It's like, okay, I'm almost done, and here's another video to
Yeah.
analyze and write the script out. It's like, damn it, damn it! I
Mhm.
gotta shut up about it. That was the joke. But it led people, especially with what I said during that point in time about Petscop and what I saw, to think that I did not like Petscop.
Okay.
Not the case at all.
Okay.
I love Petscop. It's an incredible achievement. Um, it's damn, it's hard because it's like to say that I prefer one out of all three, they all have different criteria for who wins in any situation.
Sure.
If you wanna go full-blown mystery box, um, esoteric thing that just bubbled up from the depths of the internet, and it makes you fight for its secrets, and you better sit down for an hour and think about it and ask yourself what the hell you just saw and what it all means. Petscop wins hands down. In terms of nailing nailing every bit of execution and really laying out a story and making it so that you as an audience member can pick up all the pieces if you work at it and really put together a cohesive narrative that doesn't feel like you're looking at a video game unfiction story on par with a David Lynch piece, then absolutely Catastrophe Crow.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah. I think that's totally fair. In my opinion, I definitely prefer Catastrophe Crow. Um, but I can see how it would be difficult to choose between any of the three. Moving into my next question, this is kind of something that I felt with Catastrophe Crow, and a friend of mine felt while we were watching it. Do you think it needed the extra unfiction elements, or do you think it could have functioned well on its own without all of that? So, like with Internet Story, right? It was just a video, but Catastrophe Crow has emails and different videos and like 5 different channels. It's either 4 or 5 different channels that were created specifically to upload Catastrophe Crow content. Uh,
Yep.
do you think it needed that, or do you think the video could have been fine on its own?
In order to tell the story that it wanted to tell and show how separate it was from everything else, in totality, it absolutely needed it.
Alright.
Because then you have to ask yourself, what would Catastrophe Crow be if you cut it off at the tail of that one documentary style video from Adam Butcher? And the answer is not great, honestly. It would get so many points for its execution and its presentation, and especially the execution, all the effort that went into it.
Yeah.
But the core of the story at the end, the impression that you're going to be left with is, oh joy, it's another one of these, where it's a creepy pasta video game sort of story. And surprise, surprise, there's something evil and haunted at the end, and it just ends on a nasty scare, and that's it. With all of the unfiction elements that were introduced, we came to understand so much of what we saw, and it filled in the gaps of the story that Adam Butcher was presenting about Manfred Lorenz and his pursuit and what Catastrophe Crow as a game really was. It outlines something so much better than the video on its own. If we had been stopped there, it would have been a lesser story.
Next, we're going to move on to past projects. So you've talked before about wanting to continue or even to send out some of the novels that you've created someday. Would you say that you're still looking into that?
Okay. So anybody out there, I think, who's had any experience with writing or trying to be a writer would probably have the same response that I just did at this point in time.
Uh
Because it's like you look back at anything that you've written and it's just, huh, fire it goes. Where's the trash can?
huh.
No, it's just when you work on stuff, and then you leave it for a little while, and you look back, it's like, oh, those are some ugly photographs of when I was a kid.
Mhm.
You got some good memories attached, but
Yeah.
it looked pretty ugly. Um, it is funny that you ask that. That's definitely something that never comes up. I guess because so few people know that was my first love. Is
Mhm.
just well before I got into YouTube. Just the thought was I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna be a novelist, and
Yep.
that's it. No,
Yeah. Yeah. You put
not
quite a lot of work
necessarily
into it.
wrong, but
I recall you talking about having a lot of old manuscripts. Do you still have those, by the way?
I do, I
Do
do. Yeah, I've
cool.
still got the manuscripts. I've still even got the packaged version where apparently it was spread back in the day that if you really want to make sure that you've got your copyright proof, take one of your first printouts and you send it in the mail and you get it postmarked by the post office and then you keep it sealed. So I've even still got the sealed versions,
Wow.
but I've also got the loose paper versions back in the day that I made when I was a teenager. I did the first one at 14, finished at 15, and then I was 16 and I made the second one, and I had a much better time with that one. When I was 17, I tried to tackle a third, and that just it was too big. Everything about it was just you can't handle this right now. You're gonna need some time. Just put it down, man.
Mhm.
And so I did that when I was in my senior year of high school and leaving that, I did this huge research project for myself. Instead of trying to bang out another manuscript, I said, you know what? Let's actually research from the pros, from the professionals. Because if I'm about to leave school and try and really pursue this, I want to get some actual teachers in my corner. So I sat down for about 3 or 4 months, read like 7 different books on how to write novels from authors, editors, agents, publishers, picked up a whole bunch of spare internet articles as well, and I just composed this entire distilled binder. I had a joke with a friend at a time because the exhibit meme was big, and it's like, "Yo, man, I heard you like writing books, So I know that you wrote a book on how to write books so you could write a book." And that's exactly what I did. And I've still got it, but it was the best possible thing I could have done for myself because it took all of my understanding about writing at that point, and it punched it in the face. It took it in the backyard and it beat it silly. It's like a 45-year-old, you know, a wrestler taking a teenager in the backyard and clocking him. That's what it felt like to actually get that education. But you come up with your bloody nose and your broken teeth, and it's like, oh my god, I understand now. So now all of my stuff is still trunked and very much over a decade old.
Would you? But have you ever thought of like? Has there ever been a little, a little fish that's in the back of your mind uh, that makes you want to do like write a new novel?
Always. Once you're a writer, you're never not a writer. It's it's just a matter or not of are you currently writing?
Yeah.
But it never leaves you. You can't get rid of it. You can't. You always will come back
Mhm.
in some shape or form. And I found it so funny during the first few years of Night Mind thinking about my path. And it's like, so I didn't turn out to be a novelist, but the hilarious part is I'm still doing so much with telling stories and making sure stories are told. And it's like, no wonder I'm happy doing this Night Mind thing in the first place.
Mhm.
I'm still getting to share stories. It's just not in the format that I thought of. But as for actual, words on page, manuscript type stuff, it never leaves you. It never leaves you. There's always something there. And as for whether or not there is presently anything, I can neither confirm nor deny.
No, no,
In the words of
of course.
I can neither confirm nor deny
All
the existence of extraterrestrials. And then smiles.
Depends on what your definition of is.
Depends on what your definition of novel is, too.
So, one of my favorite things from you was when you did live action, when you would do live action and physical sets. The don't, and I'm sure people tell you this all the time, but the "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared" analysis is one of my favorite analyses that I've ever seen on YouTube. The same with House of Leaves. I mean, that's the best analyses that I've ever seen of House of Leaves. Uh,
Thank you.
Although, if you want me to be honest, you didn't really have a whole lot of competition in that field, so it was kind of, you know. Is there anything in your view that makes you want to do a physical set again?
It's literally just the power of the topic. If the topic gets my gears going and it just really makes me feel creative, it's like there's okay, this is one to actually bust out the walls for. Some people might have noticed when watching the Infinity ARG two-parter back in December
Yep.
that I changed up the background for that one. And that was me feeling that again. It's like, okay, you know what? This is one of those ones where it's like, let's do something a little bit special here.
Mhm.
Let's get out of the Nightmind office for a moment and actually get more into the thematic space of the project. And that's what it always is for me. Is it's not a case of do I want to go ahead and just show everybody what I can do and flex? It's like, no. It's how compelling is this theme that it drives me to be the madman that goes to Lowe's and picks up a whole bunch of items to bring back and build a set out of for a video. Um, and there are things like that. There is a white whale that I've got that my boyfriend actually teases me about it whenever
Mm.
it comes up, but I've always had a vision for it. And it's like I've not been able to let it go. I might have to alter it, but I've always wanted to do it. And it's just like the nature of the project itself is so strong and everything that they did for just getting up and going with it and being creative that it's like that spurs my creativity. It's like a case where I've got to match the subject in kind. If you went all out like this and it gets my mind going that way, I've got to do it. I've got to.
I see. Is there anything that you're seeing right now that that might get you to want to do that though?
That is really active right now?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
No, it's just especially because it is a lot easier to do everything from the computer. Part
Mm-hmm.
of building the Nightmind office in the first place in Blender and having that was so that we could always have a touch of there is an atmosphere. There is a stepping out of the world into something else that feels thematic. Because I can't always just grab the camera and set something up and just go like that like I used to, especially with circumstances changing as they are from when I started. When I started, I had a house that I could work with. My environment was so much better for that kind of thing of just getting up and going and finding an area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I built the set for Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared in a dining room. And honestly, I built a room within a room because I could do that. For House of Leaves, that was my place at the time. Um, and it's like for that case, it's like I don't have a lot of space to work with here, but you know what? This demands it. This demands it. So I'm going to do it.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
going to do it. I'm getting a live actor for Johnny, and I'm going through with it all the way. Um, but right now, I'm not seeing anything. I've still got something kicking around in mind. It's like there's always stuff in the backlog, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like one day, you just, okay, I'm gonna need to figure out a space and grab my sister and convince her to do this, and then we'll be able to record the shit.
Oh yeah, I know it all too well.
And that's as much of a hit as I'll be able to give right now.
Gotcha. All right, I won't push further than that then. Um, Moving on to the next question. I think you're gonna like this one. Is there anything you would change about the Marble Hornets video? And no, you can't say the audio.
Oh, I can't say the
No, you
audio.
can't say the audio. You say it every time. You can't say the audio. You have to choose a different thing.
Oh, okay. Okay, you know what? If I were to tell myself something, I wouldn't have listened because I would have been too skittish. Because I was so new to the field that I felt like, who am I to question it? But my experience has taught me better now.
Mm.
I would have told myself, buddy, the secret codes and things that they've been using, as fun and clever as they absolutely make jack shit sense for the entire series. And you ought to call that.
Oh, dude.
And it's like I've evolved to the point I've done this long enough where I'm able to say definitively, looking at Marble Hornets, no, they did not have a case for all these fucking secret codes and puzzles. I love Marble Hornets to death, and it's still such a critical component of the work. But when you look at it from a narrative, logical perspective, no, it made jack shit for sense. The only logical reasoning that you can put behind it was Brian and Maskey were out of their minds, and
Yeah.
possibly Seth or whoever to the arc truly was. They were so out of their minds with Slender Sickness that they thought, let me communicate in secret codes as my primary form of saying hello.
Yeah.
That's the only logical reasoning you have, you know? And it just doesn't work against everything else because everything else was actually plotted out with so much logic and reasoning and understanding of narrative flow and character action and response. But that's what I would say is I tell myself, listen, I know you don't want to acknowledge it, but you know in your heart these secret codes are bullshit.
I think they only make sense insofar as trying to stop Alex from gaining any more information and communicating with each other in the field. But I mean, unless there
It's
was
so
unless
easy to crack though.
yeah, it is yeah,
It's so
unless Alex was like completely inept and had no idea how to do anything cryptography related, then there's no point to be doing the codes other than just I don't know for funsies. I mean, it's a good gimmick, um, but there's not a whole lot seems to service. Which do you think other unfiction pieces do that better? And if so, which
Yes.
ones? Which ones would you say?
You're gonna find out this very weekend.
Oh, I
It's
know.
Knock 10. Knock 10 is one of the best damn cases, and it's funny because after just writing the script on it, it's so fresh in my head in the beginning, it made sense as you learned about the case and the reason why there might be codes. Now there is an airtight logical positioning that makes it make sense, and the story is so much better for it altogether.
Mhm.
Altogether. It's such a difficult thing to do, this secret code stuff. And you know what? Let's go back to Catastrophe Crow. You
Mhm.
want to show somebody a very good case of how this shit is done. Look at Catastrophe Crow because it took all of that extra information to learn crow language and figure out that there were secret messages to decode. And why was that the case? Because the game was only meant for one person. The codes were only meant for one person. It was only through the audience digging through all of that material and Manfred Lorenz knowing that, wherever he is in spirit form trapped on the internet or something, or actually still physically alive, putting that material out there, he needed to do it. But it's not something where you could have just looked this up on the internet and broken it with a Caesar cipher or base 64 decoder.
Mhm.
You had to get the cipher key. You had to dig. It made sense. There are not enough series, I think, when it comes to codes and puzzles where they're thinking about whether or not it even makes sense to do this.
I agree completely. So I
It's just,
yeah I
it's fun. It is, but you gotta find a reason.
absolutely. Well, there you can't just. I mean, I've. God damn it! How many times has there been an unfiction piece where it's like, oh yeah, so the bar of entry is, hey, let's. You gotta decode. You gotta 20 essays. You gotta write 20 pages on why this ARD is gonna be good, and then you can get it, or you're getting a timeout, young man.
There's very much a factor that I keep seeing, and it's remarkable how much it relates to, say, the amateur writer, because I'm sure if anybody who gets deep enough into the writing scene to start looking at other people's stuff, or just remembers how they were when they were super young and had no idea what they were doing, and everybody else around them was the same case, you recognize how easily new people to a field grab hold of whatever was the most impactful to them in terms of feeling and try to replicate it without understanding why it worked at all or its placement along a timeline. It's like the kid who understands cake is awesome because frosting. Except, and then they try to make a cake and it's like 90% frosting. It's like, oh, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
You don't get it, kid. Oh, let me teach you how to actually make this. Because the secret codes thing and locking stories behind it, that's exactly an issue we have. And that's why a lot of projects fail, is because they understand their thrill of secret elements and mysteries and solving things and being tantalizing in that way. And the mysterious masked man who says that he's God and he's got secrets, but he's just a tapped out serial killer, and you want to go ahead and rescue his victim, so you'll deal with his bullshit. But if you present that all at the beginning and lock your story beats behind it, you're going to meet so much resistance because the first aspect of giving a damn in any situation about a story is being able to relate to it on a human level. Some foothold that you need. This is how I put it all the time. You need a human foothold. You
Yes.
need a bit of empathy. This we only care about a story if there's a human inside of it we can care about. There are very, very few cases where that is not the presentation. Very few people manage to do something like what Knock 10 did or
Mhm.
what others have done and present something that's so strange but compels you to give it a shot anyway. 9 out of 10 times, it's not going to work. You've got to have a human foothold.
I agree 300%. So, moving into the next question, because we could be sitting here talking about Marble Hornets all day. Um, in the time that you've been doing this job, um, would you say that the most requested topic is still Welcome to Night Vale? And which topic would you say people have requested time and time again that you staunchly refuse to do a video on, and why?
No, it's not Welcome to Night Vale.
Okay.
That stopped a few years ago, and I think that some of the Night Vale craze during that time is what contributed to it
Totally.
because it was so fresh in people's minds. But I think since then, it's not just a matter of having done a video on it years ago, but my voice has evolved. And I thank God for it because I listened to some old videos. I'm like, oh man, you really did not know what you were doing. You poor little kid, you were learning your way. So I'm glad to be out of that space and time. So it's not Welcome to Night Vale. As for what people ask me to cover that, it's not refusal. There, it comes in phases.
Mm,
Usually something happens that's the hot topic of the moment, and you'll get a few other people on it. And usually it's people who are doing it because they have channels where it's appropriate to do that, but it's not my wheelhouse. I get people who ask me to do stuff on true crime or internet mysteries that Rainbot or Nexpo do, and it's like they do that. I do unfiction.
yeah.
And sometimes we overlap, and it's cool if we do, and when that happens, because then you've got something that's really hitting a whole bunch of different vectors and it's getting a lot of recognition. But overall, it's a lot of hot topics of the moment. There are very few things where I will say never. Right now, nothing's really bothering me like that. Usually, it's just the fancy of the week. There's always a fancy of the week or a fancy of the month, a flavor of the month, if you will, you know? And it's just, if I'm not into it, I'm not into it. I don't do big topics or stuff that's hot just because it's hot.
Yeah.
If that were the case, there would be certain things on the channel by now that everybody was asking for at some point in time.
Mhm.
And I looked at it and I thought about it and I said no.
Quite so. Moving into general unfiction and ARG questions, it's funny that you bring up Rainbot, Nexpo, and such, because before you came along, there was a clear empty space in the field where people weren't analyzing ARGs or unfiction as fiction, but rather as things that are actually happening. Do you think that approach is misguided in any fashion? And counterpoint, if you don't, do you think it could be done wrong, and how so?
Well, I know it has been done wrong. I know that there have been videos and even series back a few years ago that people would run where they would look at content that was very, very clearly from unfiction projects, and they would completely miss the point of what it was and think that it was just some random creepy thing that they found on the internet and couldn't make sense out of. And that's blatantly misinformation.
Yeah.
It's accidental a lot of the time, I think, just because it's like a lot of these people were just like, let me sit down for 15 minutes and find some creepy shit to put together into a video and then spit out to people. And it's like, you know what? It's if that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing. But a lot of it was stuff that actually were components of stories that a lot of thought and genuine work went into it. And it's not just some random thing that you found in a deep, dark, nasty hole on the internet. It's a project, it's a story. Sometimes when there has been crossover or mistakes, like entire videos dedicated to a subject, quite often. Because Rainbot and I came up around the same time. Rainbot appeared first, as I remember it,
Mm.
and we had some conversations here and there about different things. But I would watch Rainbot's videos, and they would see mine, and all the time Rainbot would say if she found that it was unfiction or an ARG, she would say, "This is a project." I know how it looks, but it's a project. Or, a lot of the time would say, this is clearly fake, or this is most likely fake. It's scripted. So even if it was only suspected, that was still said. So we don't have too many cases of somebody just blatantly taking stuff in the field and running it up a flagpole as, oh no, look at this horrible thing on the internet, this awful evil thing that's happening. It's not, or takes it and misrepresents it for 2 minutes before moving on to the next piece in their weird shit I found today slideshow. But to the credit of the people in the field right now, everybody is pretty much on the best possible page for understanding, okay, I found this. Let's see. It's okay, yep, it's a project. It's that unfiction stuff. It's an ARG. I'll go ahead and put that in there. I'm gonna keep it anyway because it's cool and I want to show it to people, but I'll let them know. And it's like, good, 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 good.
Awesome. Perfect. That is what I like to hear. So, next question is, do you have a least favorite unfiction piece, and do you have a most disappointing unfiction piece?
Rhoda. Oh man. I mean, Eroda is such a monkey's paw because while it did so much to instantly make so many people aware that this is something you can do and this is a form of storytelling on the internet, and we can do these kind of cool little things and lure people in, and it's that form of touching the mainstream. That's brilliant. But it was for a Harry Styles music video. It's it's like, oh man, you want to go to the beach and rest on your knees and pound the sand and just scream into the surf. It's like, why? You were a chosen one. You were gonna be something, and then you just your freaking music video. It makes me laugh, and I've got literally nothing against Harry Styles or his music. It's just the fact that it turned out to be that when all of us were so hype and nothing like it was going on at the time. It's like, oh, this is gonna be good, and then it was it was Adore You.
Do you think there is a way for bands or singers or something along those lines to create an unfiction piece that's actually substantial, that's relating back to their music like Carrie was trying to do?
100%, 100%, and it's been done. It's been done. I get recommended Year Zero a lot by Nine Inch Nails,
Mhm.
which not a fan of that album, but I am a fan of everything that was done as an ARG story with that album.
Mm.
And that does tie into the music. I've had somebody that I've emailed after they emailed me a while back saying that they had just completed their own project, which was Unfiction mixed with their music as an album. It happens. You can 100% do it because a lot of the time, music is storytelling. That's why we make a lot of music videos. It's just because you can listen to these lyrics or you can listen to this music and something comes to you. Or either it's the story itself that inspired the musician in the first place, or it's something that they feel through the music or the director feels. And it's like, I can see something out of this. This is telling me a story.
Mhm.
So it's very easily done. It's been done. So I have no doubt. I have no doubt. There's still a whole lot of room to stretch out and run for musicians who want to enter this space and tell a story with their stuff,
Mhm.
who have like literally no ground that they're standing on right now.
Yeah.
Just putting stuff out on Bandcamp or something to literally no fanfare. I can actually think of an instance of something that I never covered called Erratus, which involved a fictional band, I think, called KFC Murder Chicks.
KFC
And that
Murder
was
Chicks.
part of the story.
Or have you ever heard of Lord Huron?
Ever heard of what?
Lord Huron?
It's kind of ringing a bell. I might have seen that name once. What
Okay.
is it?
It's a band. They all they do is concept albums. and they incorporate unfiction elements into their to the story of the albums a lot of the time. They have, I would say, by far, they have the most varied of unfiction elements that I've seen from a band. Let's see. They have like two different websites. They have a phone number that they change like for every album. They have a comic book that they released for the albums. They have a movie coming out this year, like a full. I'm talking like full actual 95-minute length movie that's got producers and editors and all that jazz on it. I mean, it's they've got a lot of stuff. Um,
Damn.
yeah,
It reminds me of the Killjoys era of My Chemical Romance, because while it wasn't a lot of unfiction elements attached to it, the Killjoys concept album was one where the band really tried to expand that into so many different avenues of the storytelling.
that's awesome. That's really sick. I'll have to check that out. Last question before we go on break for about 5 minutes. You've talked about how before, if YouTube went down, the skills you have are incredibly transferable, which they are. Have you thought about what field you would want to switch to with these skills that you've developed?
Yeah, yeah and no.
Uh,
Because while the skills are transferable, it would get me work in the moment. And I would do the same thing that I've always done, which is work in the moment for somebody else while developing something of my own to be under my own power. And that would also incorporate, like it did for Night Mind, a lot of sitting down and studying something and learning programs and this and that and just getting ready and getting a leg up. But I do know that for the moment at least, yeah, there's plenty that I can do for transfer. Um, I would do some video stuff, I'm sure. I would definitely lean into the voice stuff more, especially because I've been doing that more so lately. But I would still be learning stuff on the side for myself with anticipation of, okay, let's build something else now.
have you ever thought of like, let me rephrase this. You never thought of like working for a company that would develop media projects? For so like for, you would do like the
I mean, the
audio.
audio, I absolutely would.
Okay.
I absolutely would. If it involves a microphone, yeah, I would do it. Definitely. It's just it's different when you get out from under any sort of consistent control of a company. You never want to go back. And you'll do what you have to the same way that you did on your way up to that point, like all human beings do, and all creators do, especially. It's just we work until we see the day where we work for ourselves. And if that day ends up coming tonight, then we have to do what we have to do again. And then we work on it again, just to get back to that place. I definitely think I would be a lot happier the next go round if anything were to happen. But I'm certainly comfortable on a microphone. I'm comfortable with Adobe suite of programs. I'm comfortable with doing a lot of video stuff. So I'd be fine with it. I'd be fine with it. But especially the microphone stuff, because that feels less like clocking in for a shift or just doing some sort of workload that's thrown at you. That feels like genuinely contributing.
Absolutely. We're going to go to a quick commercial break and then we will be right back, everybody. And we are back, everybody. So, moving on to the other actual half of this podcast, we're finally getting to the music and the sound design questions. Yay! You've mentioned before that the part of the video making process that you dread the most, and you talk about this a lot, is the audio. Do you feel like that still holds true? And have you ever tried using any other, audio DAWs to kind of that would help lighten the workload over what you're using right now?
No, because I still dig Adobe Audition. a lot, and I'm so used to it, and I know precisely what I'm doing when I'm in the program. There's always a chance that there are things that could make my life simpler that I just never knew about, and I would feel like I've lost years of my life to not doing that instead, if somebody were to ever tell me, but I feel good with Adobe Audition, and I enjoy it, and it's still a lengthy process, it's still an annoying process,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it has its own enjoyment factor because a huge amount of working on the audio process is actually silent, and I get to queue up some stuff that I haven't watched, and get caught up along the side while I do that. So I get to work and I get to catch up on things and watch things and even maybe do a bit more viewing research for another project.
Hmm.
And that helps a lot. But audio, yes, it is the lengthiest part of the process. I have, after I record, I've got about three different phases. The first thing that I've got to do is I've got to go in and delete all of the bad takes. Any lines that I flubbed, any takes that I like better, make sure that I've got that version of it. So I've got all the material. Then I have to go in and get rid of all of the empty space noise in between pieces because you can do a noise removal and a background noise removal process, but it will never get everything. It will take the general hiss and stuff out of the background throughout the entire track, but you will still have what I call dirt on the track, which is just, you see it pop up in the frequency view and it's like, nope, let me kill that. And then you have to go ahead and tailor out the edges uh, so that things kind of roll smooth instead of any hard clip, which most of the stuff that I'm describing, people will never hear, but I hear it. I hear it, and that
Absolutely.
torments me. So it's like, I've got to take care of it. So I clean up, and then I've got all the pieces, and then I do the pacing pass, which makes sure that all of my timing is good for the lines. So it's not just like, I just described this part of the air G, and then after that space, I pick up the rest of the sentence,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah,
Because, oops, I ran out of breath.
yeah.
So let me just go ahead and make sure that I close that space so I get that paced up. And then for the final pass, I go in inside of all of the things that I actually say and I remove all the nasty little mouth noises that pop up and the clicks and the pops and all that shit. And that is how you make a Night Mind audio track.
Gotcha. Have you ever tried using Reaper?
No.
That's what I use. Incredibly easy to work with. I'm not sponsored by them, but if they did offer me a sponsorship, I would absolutely take it. Highly recommend it if you got the time. Um,
Okay.
my next question is in the vein of music and sound design questions. I never saw anybody ask you this, but have you ever played any instruments?
I fiddled around with a bass guitar when I was younger.
Really?
Um, and then I ended up trading that bass guitar to a friend who is an actual musician who told me once, "Yo, so and so's got this sick Batman guitar that they want to get rid of, but they need a bass. Would you be willing to trade?" And me looking at the bass in the corner of the room that's been dusty and sat untouched and unloved for over a year, I'm like, "Yes, I would. Yes, I would." And now I have this Batman guitar, and it's an honest to God, it's an electric guitar, and it's the classic yellow and black Batman symbol all
Yo!
across all of the front of it, the body of it. So I treasure that thing. It is horribly out of tune. I'm not even sure if it still works if you would plug it in, but I treasure my Batman guitar.
That
And
that is awesome.
that's the only instrument I have.
Wow, that is fascinating. So, I'm gonna try to refrain from talking about House of Leaves too much because if we get into it, we're gonna be here for another at least 6 hours. So, I'm gonna just ask you this one question about the House of Leaves video and the album that you had requested that a friend help you out with for the video. Um, did you ever, for the process of making the album and the compositions and the scores, did you ever suggest any particular melodies or ideas, or did you just let the composer kind of go ham with it and do what they felt was right?
So the composer is Corey Croft.
Mm.
He calls himself Corey Croft and the Band of Phantoms because it's literally just Corey Croft.
Uh-huh.
So the Band of Phantoms are, yeah, phantoms. Occasionally, he will have one other person help for certain things, and it just maybe like one or two tracks or something. But mostly it's him, and he and I have been boys since I was not Nick Nocturne. He actually saw the intro piece that I composed for the first Marble Hornets video on my phone before anybody else even knew I was doing this. And we were at a casino at the time with his girlfriend of the time because she wanted to go to the casino. And he and I were just not into it while she was out playing slots. So we were over at this ice cream place in the casino, just standing in line to get milkshakes. I'm like, yo, this is that thing I've been working on. And I show it to him, and it just the all of the first Marvel Hornets intro. And he's watching it. He's like, yo, I think you've got something here, man. And I'm like, you think so? He's like, I think this is something. Sure enough, almost 6 years later, here we are. Um, legitimately, almost 6 years later,
Yeah.
because I truly began working on Night Mind in March, April of 2015. Yeah, Corey and I have been boys forever. And when it came time for House of Leaves, he's always been a solo musician after his first band, making his own stuff, and I knew I always wanted to do something with him with his music. So I gave him the concept of what House of Leaves is and some material to look at. And so he composed a whole bunch of instrumental tracks. And I didn't have any specific melodies. I gave him more so feelings and ideas of who the characters are and what their themes would be like. And so I said, I trust you with it. I know you've got this. And so he came up with a whole bunch of material. And I went over to his place one day and we sat down and we just went through it together. And it was a lot of, oh, I know what this is and this feels good. And oh my God, you did that. And also moments of, I can't believe you picked up on this. You must have had a psychic connection to the book at some point because he hadn't read the book. It would have been with the time constraints that we had, it would have been asinine for me to tell him, "Hey, sit down and do the 9 days challenge. Just bang this thing out, okay? Cool." It would have been ridiculous for me to do that. But I also wanted it to just very organically be him, and he knocked it out of the park.
Mm.
So I didn't really suggest anything instrumentally so much as when he had the material made. We sat down and we went through it together and we decided, okay, this is going in, or this might need some tweaking. Let's try this, or oh my God, you nailed it in one. That's it.
Yeah, I was curious about how that process had gone for the video, especially since it's such a personal project. On to the next question. What is your favorite song, and what is your favorite album from Ice Nine Kills?
Oh man. Okay, well the favorite album is obvious, but it's no competition, not because it's horror, but because I still need to listen to the rest of the discography.
Really?
But Silver Screen, of course. That's my favorite song. You know what? Oh God, no wait, because I can't. It's because it's a tie. It's a tie.
It's a tie. All right, that's
It's a
fine.
tie between "Thank God It's Friday" and what was the? Hold on a second, because I'm not gonna get this wrong. I'm not gonna get this wrong.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
"Thank God It's Friday" and "Savages." There it is.
Savages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between "Thank God It's Friday" and "Savages."
Gotcha.
You can't not turn up when it's "Savages."
Totally. I agree 100%. Now, about the Loudmouths podcast, you had said that the kind of music that you listen to depends on the time of the year. So, what kind of music are you rocking these days during the spring?
Okay, during the spring, a lot of the time it does come out to what albums lately come out during that time of year because then if I go ahead and I sit down and I listen to the album, it naturally ties itself to that season.
Mm-hmm.
Mother by In This Moment came out last year
Mm-hmm.
at the end of March. Like it's literally right around the time when the album came out. And God, what an unfortunate time to release an album. But In This Moment's Mother is a good time. But around this time, um, I usually play one of my favorites, and this has been since the album came out. Rob Zombie's Venomous Rat Regeneration Vendor. That
Mm-hmm.
is such a good album. Rob Zombie's been on a friggin' roll
Mm-hmm.
ever since he released that album. It was like the revival of Rob Zombie, and he just a whole new aesthetic. It was like he was reborn practically, or he just had an evolution, like a Pokemon evolution
Yeah.
of Rob Zombie into crazy horror 70s hippie acid groove, dude. And it's awesome because everything it still rocks. Um, but I've got very fond memories of just every spring into summer listening to Venomous Rat Regeneration Vendor.
Mm-hmm.
Around this time as well, this is gonna shock some people, I
Oh,
think.
really?
The Bangarang EP by Skrillex and Recess.
Ooh.
Because Recess was that one album he dropped without telling anybody that he even had an album. It just appeared in stores one day. I remember talking to a friend about it. He's like, "Yo, everybody's been doing that lately. They're just dropping their albums and not telling anybody. It just shows up in stores." I'm like, "Have you listened to it? Do you like it?" He's like, "Yeah, it's all right." Still not better than Bangarang. Recess is not better than Bangarang. I will say that.
Gotcha.
But it's hard to get better than Bangarang. Springtime, it's just there's a lot of albums, it's just you go through your memories and you think about certain things in this time and it's just like stuff pops up. It's like, oh, that's a spring album too. And then it's like you think about some other albums, it's like, nope, that's a summer album. That's a summer album. I
Mm-hmm.
can't touch that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. True. 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 That's awesome, man. I'm gonna have to give some of the albums that you mentioned a listen because I've also been looking for more things to add to my repertoire of music to listen to. And
Yeah, Run DMC, by the way, did just release a brand new album at the beginning of this month.
really
In same vein of what he's done for the last two albums, and you know what? It kicks ass. It's great.
awesome.
I've listened to it like 3 times already straight through, and I'm digging it.
That's sick. I will have to give that a listen to as well. So, on the Loudmouths podcast, you had also said, and you'd also said something along the lines of, if during October, if a kid in high school that sits in the back that's like the emo goth kid with like the ripped jacket is listening to it, then that is absolutely what I'm listening to in October. And that had, for whatever reason, the first thing that came to my mind was Panic at the Disco. Um, what is your thoughts on Panic at the Disco as it is right now?
Okay, so back during the heyday of Panic at the Disco, you were either one of three things. You were either an MCR kid, a Panic at the Disco kid, or they were both your Lord and Savior.
Mm-hmm.
I was an MCR kid.
Really?
Doesn't mean anything against Panic at the Disco, because come on, we all grew up off of their like first single. Everybody knows. The last time I heard Panic at the Disco, though, it was some of their lighter fare that, for some reason, every furry and every dance comp that entire year at cons used that for their dance music, and it just you couldn't get away from it, and that's how I knew Panic at the Disco was back. And that's the only opinion I have right now. Panic at the Disco is just thinking of that one song, and it's like, oh yeah, God, I'm seeing first seats on stage now, just as I'm hearing it in my head. Let's change the channel.
Have you listened to any songs by I Don't Know How? I Don't Know How, but They Found Me is the full name.
I have not, but I've had them brought up to me before because they seem like they're doing some Unfiction stuff to people, and I have not looked into it, so I cannot verify that.
They have been doing a lot of Unfiction stuff recently. Well, see, it's kind of interesting because they haven't been doing it a whole lot recently, but when the band was just getting started out, they were doing a lot of Unfiction stuff. Now it seems like they still are, but it's kind of toned down, which I think is fine, especially considering the album they just recently released, which by the way is fantastic. isn't so much about the fictional story and more just about Dallin's experiences with Hollywood. And I don't know. I think it's interesting. If you have the time, I would recommend you check them out as well.
Okay, yeah. For the amount of times that they've been brought up, I definitely should give them a spin.
Totally. So moving on to our last couple prompts, we have it's just movies, TV, video games, and miscellaneous questions, just all that. So back in 2015, you had said that your favorite movie was Mulholland Drive. Is it still your favorite movie? And if it isn't, what is now? And does this hold true for the other movies that you had on your list as well?
No, it's still Mulholland Drive.
So Mulholland Drive.
It, it's still one of the only movies I'll ever describe as a perfect film.
Yep. Would you say that Kill Bill, Trick or Treat, Matrix, and The Wall are still your top five?
Ooh, we gotta add Hereditary into the mix
Hereditary. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
you gotta add Hereditary into the mix.
All right. You had said that Chainsaw Massacre is the best horror movie that or you would say is the best horror movie. Does that still hold true, by the way? Do you still feel that?
That's tough. That again, that goes to the factor of when you consider certain things, it's like who did what best and why is this the best in its way? And Texas Chainsaw is absolutely one of those. Um, I don't know. It's you get to a point with studying media or just taking in so much stuff that you can't do that kind of thing where you just line 5 or 10 things up in a row, point at one and say the best definitively, you know? Um, especially because it's in a field where there's gold, you know?
Mm.
But Texas Chainsaw is still so above so many things in so many ways that its place is forever cemented as this is gold. This is one of the major roots of an entire tree, and you will not ever remove it.
That's totally fair to me. So what is your least favorite horror movie, and why is it The Bye Bye Man?
Is that my least favorite now? I don't know because I've seen a fair amount of awful stuff
Sure.
ever since. So my boyfriend has a habit of sometimes at night he just likes to turn on any random horror film. It doesn't matter the rating, and he'll watch it, and I'll often see it too. So I've been subjected to a lot of garbage in just passing. So I don't know if it is the Bye Bye Man, but Bye Bye Man was still pretty friggin' awful.
Okay, fair enough answer to me. So I think it was on the Loudmouths podcast as well that you had said that you really loved It Chapter 1, and I really liked It Chapter 1 as well. How'd you feel about It Chapter 2?
Hmm. It was still great. It was still great to me.
Okay.
It's hard, man. It is so hard with part twos versus part ones, especially when you break ground with a part one. Because then no matter how good your sequel is, it's just not gonna stand. It won't manage to hold the candle. There are very few examples I can think of groundbreakers or just surprise successes where the sequel or the part two is managing to really beat the part one. But I think the part one definitely does have to still be the better factor because you have that beautiful aspect of horror films where everything is new and you don't know what to expect. You can still get plenty of awesome tricks out of a sequel or another installment and the what happens next factors, but nothing is as good as that first good scare or that moment where you see something absolutely grotesque and horrible, or just the pure magic of somebody making a revival of it for a theatrical release and it being one of the best damn horror movies of the year or a few years, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want my personal opinion about it, chapter 2, I really liked it after I walked out of the theater, and then I thought about the ending a little bit more, and then I started to feel kind of sour about it because the way that they deal with Pennywise kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I understand that it's similar to how it is in the book, where they kind of need to beat him with hate, but I don't think that's the correct way to respond to hate. Is to hit back with hate. So I don't know how they could have represented that better in the film, but oh man, I I I I think absolutely the worst part of it is the ending. The rest of it is good.
That's not exactly something that I thought of necessarily. I've had plenty of moments, me and my boyfriend both, coming out of the theater, walking back to the car, and man, don't you hate when that happens when you're walking along and just you're finally starting to digest it, and then all of the thorns pop up and all of the blemishes, and it's like, "Oh, okay, hold on." And then you have to talk back. So we've had several moments where it's like we're talking about what we just saw and things that didn't make sense, or it's like, "Wait a minute, let's pull this apart here. Let's actually take this apart." I don't think we did that so much with It Chapter 2. Um, I didn't think much about that ending myself, but I think you have a point there, especially if Pennywise is an amorphic creature like that.
Well,
Hmm.
just thematically, right? Like he is the physical embodiment of hate. That is what he is. And for the kids to respond back to that and to beat him by calling him names. I want to point that out. They didn't use weapons or they didn't use like the silver or what have you like they did in the book or in the old series where I think they just tore out his heart, which is where he was like a giant spider, which is like a whole other can of worms. But in this movie, they fired back at him and they fought him with words, but not words that you would use to actually combat hate in a healthy manner. They insulted him. It's like it's I don't know if that's so much of a good lesson to have.
Yeah, no, that's something that didn't occur to me, but it is an excellent point to raise
Mm,
of just thematically of how do you combat that? Because Pennywise for me is always, it is presented as it is the eater of fear. Makes it makes itself strong off of people's fear of it.
yes.
So to respond to that kind of thing with anger and belittling, life experience does go to show that, yeah, that's not as strong as just apathy.
Yes.
It's not as strong as apathy or acceptance, which could have been just the worst thing that would have happened to Pennywise, is being able to actually just have a show of you have no power over me in that regard of literally I'm not reacting. So it's interesting to think about from that angle.
Food for thought. Moving on to the next thing. We're gonna talk about some video games. What kind of games have got your attention nowadays, and what kind of games are making you wanna not pay attention to video games? If you can name any.
Persona's got me right
Oh,
now.
Persona.
Because one of the best periods in my life when it comes to video games was when Persona 5 came out, and I had never really played a JRPG.
Mm,
I especially never played anything like Persona. That ate my life for 2 weeks, and I was so happy to hand it over. It's like a golden memory to me
mhm,
of just that one period in time in April 2017, just going through Persona 5. And so this year, Persona 5 Strikers came out, or Persona 5 Scramble.
mhm. Uh-huh.
And that came out in February, and I'm like, oh, why can't it be April again? But I sat down and I played it anyway at the beginning of this month. And you know what? I still got a flash of that. And it
Mm,
still felt like a damn good proper sequel. They changed up the combat system in almost entirely, but it still works extremely well. And then after that, because they ported Persona 4 to PC,
Mhm.
it's like, you know what? All right, I'll give this a shot. I'll give this a shot. So right now I'm going through Persona 4. And so it's given me some of those feelings again. But yeah, I just can't beat Persona 5. It's just there's so much about it. The only complaint I can ever have about Persona 5 is that their dialogue writing is trash, but all of their other writing is glorious.
Okay.
So that's just where I'm at right now. Is just Persona 4 and enjoying that time, and just thinking ahead to Resident Evil Village.
Of course. So you played Persona 4. Have you played any of the other Persona games before that?
No,
No.
no, because it's just basically what I can get my hands on right now
Okay.
that for the capabilities that I have, which is just the PC and modern gen consoles.
I see. Gotcha, gotcha. We're getting into the miscellaneous questions, last few questions. This was requested from a friend of mine. When are you going to another furry convention?
When we have for Apocalypse this year, as long as we do go on,
Okay.
which I don't have any official confirmation, but I'm very, 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 very much in the belief that we're gonna go on just because of the vaccine timeline and how everything is shaping up.
Yeah.
It's the end of October. Everything right now is pointing to mass vaccination and, you know, life returning to normal by the end of summer.
Nature is
I've
healing.
got no doubt we're gonna go on. That's not official word,
Mm.
but that's what I'm feeling, and that would be the answer.
Awesome. Thank you very much. This is another question from a friend that I had. How exactly do you feel about MatPat?
I think that a few years ago, I wasn't keen on MatPat,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what? It wasn't great. Huh, I misjudged MatPat. I misjudged MatPat because it's easy to misjudge him. I think because you cause a lot of trouble for yourself when you play a characterized version of yourself under your own name and your own face, then it's extremely easy to look at the person and say, "Oh, you're just an asshole then." When it's very much a character, and that's I feel for Matt Pat because I've had those issues before because it's who am I? I sound like a Stan Lee character. I'm Nick Nocturne. I am a cat monster with 4 eyes running a YouTube channel who always talks like he's trying to invite you to bed. I mean, come on. It's a character, it's transparent as hell, and it's talking about an entire field in which the protocol is you are a character first, and then when the project is over, you can probably come out and say hello as a human being, but don't you break your kayfabe.
Mm-hmm.
That's very hard to do when you're somebody like Matt Pat. But it took a few years of perspective of understanding the position that he had and how that got so misconstrued, and also that I just didn't need to be so uptight about him.
True.
It's I think he's a good guy, genuinely. And I think one of the happiest things that I remember is when I saw that he had a kid. I feel so good for him. That's got to be one of the best damn feelings in the world. So I wish him all the happiness and especially him, his kid.
That's awesome. Hey, speaking of that, you thinking of settling down with the kid soon?
No. I'm too no, but that's simply not in the cards for a multitude of factors, but it's like I've got an entire online family. I've got I've got all of these kids out here who depend on me to keep making content and, just bringing the field forward and, helping see them through their creativity, and that's where I get my side of it from, is seeing this stuff grow.
Totally fair. So we're about to close out here. I have one last question for you. You've talked about the workload and the passion that you have for your projects a lot. And for a man whom before was looking into a field that really had nothing to do with unfiction, what would you say to people who are down on their luck and are trying to find something to ignite that kind of raw, unfiltered passion that you have? What would your advice to them be?
I think one of the most important lessons to take away from my journey for people is that because I went through a whole lot of stuff. It wasn't just the novels. After that, it was looking into websites. It was looking into a whole bunch of other things as well. And I got to a point where I just felt burnt out and depressed and without a guiding. And then doing something for YouTube specifically because nobody had done the Marble Hornets thing. And when I went into that project, I went into it with a completely different mindset.
Mhm.
I did it without expectations. I did it purely for the love of it without thinking about what could come of it. And I just let my passion and my love for it lead me. And finally, that was what was successful. The first time in my life,
Mhm.
that's what was successful, was the time that I stopped caring about what could be instead of yeah, I just I dove into the effort. I wanted to make it the best damn thing it could be for its own sake and because I loved it, not because of any thought of what it could do for me or what it could be or what the audience size might be. When you let go of that, when you find something that you care about that deeply that you don't give a damn, you're not even thinking about audience. You're just thinking about making the best possible thing and then seeing what happens, that's probably going to be the moment it happens for you. That's got to be your pilot light. Do not ever do this stuff because you're thinking that, say, you're going to finish it and it's going to be impressive and you're going to get maybe an agent or you're going to get a contract or something, or you're going to go online and it's going to blow up and you're going to make 10,000 plus sales or something. Do it because you love it. Do it because you will be dissatisfied if you do not do it purely because you want to that badly. Do it because you love it and have no expectations, and you will be surprised what happens.
Fantastic advice from Catman Stevens Nick Nocturne. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming onto the show, Nick. It was an absolute blast. I loved having you on. Is there anything else you want to tell the people before we close out?
One of the best things about Unfiction is knowing that if you've got a story that you want to tell and you've got some means to tell it, you can just do it. You've got no studio overhead. You've got no agent you need to pick up. If you've got the idea, you've got the initiative, and you think you've got a way to get it out there, you can do it. And there will be people out there who will bring you up and support you. This is a free field. So don't go sitting back thinking that you're working on things where you've got no chance to get it out into the world because an agent's not going to pick it up, or a company is not going to care, or a studio doesn't want that, or the market doesn't want that. Fuck that.
Yeah.
This is an open gate. Come to us. We've got you.
Fuck yeah. Thank you all so very much for tuning in to another episode of the Unfictional Soundscape. Specifically, thank you to Nick for coming on. If you're not already subscribed to his channel, you're doing yourself and the world a disservice. Like I said in the beginning, check out his 2 newest videos on PB Here and Catastrophe Crow, and tune in this weekend for yet another upload from the Catman himself. Thanks again, Nick. Whatever platform you're watching on, Anchor, YouTube, Spotify, etc., make sure you're following the channel, specifically YouTube, where I am uploading once per week every week. This time was no different, and neither will the next. Make sure to follow me on all associated platforms for regular updates on what's coming. Next time, we'll be getting back to business with a close analysis of a prominent Unfiction piece. Be sure to drop in and say hi. If you ever want to request a guest or a specific topic, shoot me an email at ag3ntidaho@gmail.com, agentidaho@gmail.com. Thanks again for tuning in. Remember to look behind you, and take care.